Welcome to an in-depth and captivating journey through history. In this video, we will delve deeply into one of the most dramatic events in Roman history, the Battle of Varus in AD 9. Here, the Roman army led by Publius Quinctilius Varus suffered a devastating defeat against the Germanic tribes in the Teutoburg Forest. We will delve deeply into the reasons for the tragic fate of Varus and his army and examine the crucial factors that led to defeat. This battle had far-reaching effects on the history of Rome and Germania. The terrain and strategic challenges. The terrain in which the Varus battle took place was one of the deciding factors in the defeat of the Roman army. The Teutoburg Forest covers an extensive area with dense forests, deep ravines, and swampy areas. The rough terrain proved extremely unfavorable for the Roman legionnaires. Roman warfare is based on discipline, clear formations, and the ability to fight in an ordered battle array. The Roman legionnaires were excellently trained soldiers who demonstrated their superiority in open battles. They were not prepared for forest combat or combat over rough terrain. The dense forests of the Teutoburg Forest obstructed visibility and left little room for maneuver. Unable to line up their formations as usual, the Romans were forced to move in close formation through the rough terrain. This made them an easier target for the Germanic warriors, who skillfully hid behind trees and bushes and then launched surprise attacks. In addition, the deep gorges and swampy places were another obstacle for the Roman legionnaires. The Romans traveled in heavy equipment, and crossing ravines and swamps slowed their advance considerably. The Germans, on the other hand, knew the secret paths and evasive routes in the forest, which enabled them to act quickly and efficiently. Another aspect of the terrain was the limited visibility in the dense forest. This hampered the Romans' ability to detect German movements and attacks early on. The Germans, on the other hand, knew the hidden paths and could move almost invisibly before launching their attacks on the Roman legions. It is important to emphasize that when the Roman army invaded Germania, they had no idea what challenges they would face in the Teutoburg Forest. The strategic misjudgment of the terrain proved to be one of the first crucial weaknesses for the Romans and gave the Germans a clear tactical advantage. The Roman governor Varus and his officers found it difficult to make adequate adjustments to the terrain. Your usual battle tactics won't work in this difficult terrain. The Romans did not have enough time to adjust to the new situation, as they were known to be in enemy territory and surrounded by the Germans. In the decisive moments of the battle, the Roman army was attacked by the Germans in a clever ambush. The Romans were forced to defend themselves while trying to fight through the rough terrain. The tactical flexibility that was their strength in pitched battles proved to be a handicap in this situation. Subsequently, the Roman army was increasingly decimated and demoralized in the dense Teutoburg Forest. The Romans were forced to engage in a defensive battle instead of conducting their usual offensive. This situation was exacerbated when the Germanic warriors used guerrilla warfare-like tactics to continually ambush and then retreat from the Romans. The Varus battle clearly demonstrated how terrain and strategic challenges can affect an army's fate. The Romans were trapped in unfavorable terrain and were unable to successfully employ their usual battle tactics. The terrain of the Teutoburg Forest thus played a crucial role in the defeat of Varus and his army against the Germanic tribes. Logistics and supply issues. Logistics and supplies were crucial aspects of any Roman military campaign, but in the Battle of Varus, these factors proved particularly challenging. The Roman army operating usually resided in the well-organized and well-developed provinces of the Roman Empire, where they could draw on a well-established supply network. But in Germania, a territory alien and hostile to the Romans, they faced numerous obstacles. As Varus and his legions advanced into Germanic territory, they were cut off far from the normal supply lines and resources of the Roman provinces. This meant the army had to rely on long and dangerous supply lines to bring in supplies and reinforcements. The distance and hostile terrain made it difficult to transport food, weapons, equipment, and medical supplies. The Germanic tribes who knew the terrain and surroundings well skillfully exploited this weakness of the Romans. They attacked the Roman supply forces and blocked supply lines, cutting off the Roman army from much-needed resources. The German warriors were able to observe the movements of the Roman supply caravans and strategically sabotage them in order to weaken the Roman troops. In addition to the physical challenges of supply, the Roman army also had to deal with the fact that its presence in Germania met with resistance and hostility from the local population. This led to a lack of support from local resources and rejection of the Romans, further aggravating the supply situation. The supply problems had devastating effects on the morale and fighting power of the Roman troops. The soldiers were hungry, exhausted, and demoralized by not having enough to eat and fighting in enemy territory with no prospect of reinforcements or retreat. Uncertainty about care and lack of support from home led to increasing frustration and despair. Varus and his officers were unable to adequately handle these logistical challenges. Their misjudgment of the difficulties presented by the Germanic terrain and hostile environment was a crucial error. The army did not have enough supplies and resources to maintain its fighting power, further hampering its ability to effectively oppose the Germanic tribes. The supply problems also affected the tactical decisions of Varus and his officers. The Roman army was forced to march directly through the Teutoburg Forest to keep supply lines as short as possible. This resulted in the army being trapped in the dense forest and easily targeted by the well-hidden and agile Germanic warriors. In the desperate situation, Varus might have been forced to make difficult decisions to protect supply lines and keep troops together. This may have prompted him to take risky shortcuts or make risky tactical decisions that became disastrous later in the battle. The supply problems that arose in the Varus battle are a clear example of how important logistical considerations and the ability to effectively supply the army can affect the fate of a military campaign. The lack of supplies and the resulting weakening of the Roman army was a significant factor contributing to the devastating defeat of Varus and his army against the Germanic tribes. Misjudgments of the Germanic tribes. Another crucial factor that contributed to the defeat at the Varus battle was the Roman commander's misjudgment of the Germanic tribes. The Romans often viewed the Germans as uncivilized barbarians and underestimated their fighting power and organizational skills. Indeed, some Germanic tribes, like the Chersii, under their charismatic leader Arminius, were by no means disorganized or primitive. Arminius was a brilliant strategist and warrior who possessed a remarkable knowledge of both Roman and Germanic warfare. In his youth, he had gone to Rome as a hostage and received Roman training and military experience there. These experiences gave him a unique insight into how the Romans worked, which he later used cunningly against them. Arminius played a crucial role in preparing the revolt of the Germanic tribes against Roman occupation. He understood Roman tactics and the legion's weaknesses in forest warfare. He won the trust of Varus and some other Roman officers and presented himself as a loyal ally, but in truth, he hatched a cunning plan to lure the Romans into a deadly trap. The Roman historian Tacitus reported that Arminius reassured the Roman commanders through skillful deception and dissimulation. He pretended to assist them in conquering and administering Germania, while secretly organizing a grand coalition of Germanic tribes against the Roman presence in Germania. Little did Varus and his officers know that a great betrayal was taking place behind the scenes. They firmly believed that Arminius and other Germanic tribes were their allies and that no serious threat threatened them. This misjudgment led to the Romans becoming careless, which was to be disastrous for them later. While Varus and his army moved through the Teutoburg Forest, Arminius played his crucial role. He led them into a narrow and difficult-to-pass gorge surrounded by dense forest. There, the Germans had prepared a deadly trap, which they kept cleverly disguised to lull the Romans into security. With the Roman legions trapped, the Germanic warriors launched a devastating surprise attack. The Romans were attacked from all sides and had no means of escape or an orderly defense. Seeming ally Arminius revealed his true allegiance and now fought the Romans on the front lines. The misperception of the Germanic tribes as disorganized and primitive proved to be a serious mistake by the Roman commanders. The coalition of Germanic tribes led by Arminius was well organized, strategically adept, and determined to drive the Romans out of Germania. The Romans had failed to adequately recognize and respond to the threat posed by the Germanic tribes and paid a heavy price for this in the devastating defeat of the Varus battle. Communication problems and leadership mistakes. Communication and coordination between the Roman legions proved inadequate and was another crucial factor in defeat in the Varus battle. Varus led 3 legions into battle, the 17th, 18th, and 19th Legion. Each legion consisted of thousands of soldiers and had its own officers and commanders. While the Roman legions were formed by disciplined and experienced soldiers, the physical separation between each legion and the difficulty of communicating effectively with one another proved a serious obstacle. In the rough terrain of the Teutoburg Forest, it was difficult to get orders from one unit to another quickly and reliably. This led to confusion and indecisiveness as the Roman legions had to respond to the ever-changing battle situation. The troops were unable to work together effectively and carry out coordinated maneuvers, which greatly reduced their combat effectiveness. In addition, discord and rivalries among Roman officers further aggravated the problems. Each officer wanted to impose their own course of action and let their legion emerge as the decisive force in battle. This led to an inconsistent and chaotic decision-making process, as officers were unable to agree on a common strategy. Arminius and the Germanic tribes, on the other hand, showed remarkable unity and coordination in this regard. They had a clear plan and a unified strategy, which they implemented in a disciplined manner. Through their skillful communication and coordination, they were able to time their attacks on the Roman legions and exploit weak points in the defenses. Stuck in the dense forests and caught off guard by the Germanic attacks, the Roman legions failed to respond or organize effectively. The Germans took advantage of the Romans' communication problems and inflicted heavy casualties on them. Another leadership flaw that became evident in the Varus battle was Varus's failure to adequately motivate and inspire his troops. Soldiers' morale was at rock bottom as they found themselves in a hostile environment, separated from their families and Roman civilization, and frustrated by the lack of supplies and communication problems. Varus and his officers failed to give the soldiers a sense of unity and cohesion. The Roman legionnaires felt abandoned in their hopeless situation and abandoned by their leadership. This undermined the soldiers' confidence in their commanders and reduced their determination to stand firm and fight. In a critical situation like the Varus battle, it is vital that leadership adequately motivates and inspires troops, even under extreme conditions. The failure of Varus and his officers to do this contributed to the Roman army becoming demoralized and unable to withstand the Germanic attacks. In summary, the communication problems and leadership errors in the Varus battle played a crucial role in the defeat of the Roman army. The legion's inability to communicate and work together effectively, and the leadership's failure to adequately motivate and inspire the troops, severely weakened the combat effectiveness of the Roman army and made it easier for the Germans to achieve their decisive victory. The surprise attack of Arminius. The defining moment of the Varus battle was the devastating surprise attack launched by Arminius and the Germanic tribes on the Roman army. As the Roman legions marched through the Teutoburg Forest under Varus, they still felt relatively safe, believing they were being accompanied and supported by their supposed allies. Unknowingly, however, they had entered the trap that Arminius had carefully planned. Arminius directed the Roman army deep into the Teutoburg Forest, away from any possibility of quick escape or reinforcements. He led them into a narrow gorge surrounded by thick forest and trapped the Roman army. When the Romans were trapped in the gorge, Arminius struck. The Germanic warriors, who had until then kept their real intentions hidden, burst out of the undergrowth and surprised the Roman legionnaires with a massive attack. The Romans were completely caught off guard and overwhelmed by the sudden intensity of the attack. The surprise and confusion caused by the attack caused the Roman army to panic and was unable to maintain an orderly defense. The dense forests of the Teutoburg Forest made it difficult for the Romans to form up and fight effectively. The Germanic warriors, on the other hand, knew the terrain well and maneuvered dexterously through the trees to ambush the Romans. The surprise attack set off a chain reaction. The Roman legionnaires were in turmoil as enemy warriors charged them from all sides. The communication problems and spatial separation between the legions further aggravated the situation, as they were unable to react quickly to the rapidly changing battle situation. In the heat of battle, the Roman troops tried desperately to defend themselves, but the superior numbers and tactical skill of the Germanic warriors proved too overwhelming. Varus and his officers fought bravely to encourage their troops, but the Romans were caught in a hopeless situation. The weather made this situation even worse. A heavy downpour set in, turning the ground into a muddy and slippery surface. The heavily armed Roman legionnaires found it difficult to maneuver in the muddy terrain, further reducing their mobility and making them easy targets for the light-footed and well-armed Germanic warriors. Amid the chaos and confusion, Varus and many of his officers were killed. The Roman legions were decimated and eventually surrendered to the Germanic warriors. The few surviving Roman soldiers were captured or killed. The surprise attack by Arminius and the Germanic tribes was a tactical masterpiece and one of the main causes of the Roman army's devastating defeat at the Varus battle. Arminius' skillful deception and dissimulation had lured the Romans into a deadly trap from which there was no escape. The Germans' well-coordinated attacks from the undergrowth and rapid retreats had demoralized and confused the Roman legionnaires with a devastating result. The Varus battle was a turning point in history and had far-reaching implications for the history of Rome and Germania. Arminius' surprise attack and the tactical brilliance of the Germanic tribes had finally halted Roman expansion in Germania. The defeat of Varus and his army became a devastating ignominy for the Roman Empire and should serve as a cautionary tale for the Roman leadership not to venture too recklessly into unfamiliar and hostile territory. Effects of the Varus battle. The Varus battle had had a significant impact on the history of Rome and Germania, and its consequences were to have a long-term impact on both cultures. For the Roman Empire, the defeat meant a severe loss of prestige. The Roman army was previously considered almost invincible, and its legions had proven their superiority in many battles. The defeat against the supposedly barbarian Germanic tribes was a severe blow to the self-confidence of the Roman legionnaires and the rule of the Roman Empire. The Varus battle also resulted in a setback for Roman expansion in Germania. After the devastating defeat, the Romans withdrew behind the Rhine and abandoned their plans to conquer Germania any further. From then on, Roman control of the region was limited to the part on the right bank of the Rhine and the area west of the Rhine. The defeat against the Germans also had political consequences in Rome. Varus and many of his officers had died in battle, and public opinion was against the military expeditions into Germania. The Roman Emperor Augustus, who had advocated the conquest of Germania, is said to have exclaimed in desperation after the news of the defeat, "Quinctilius Varus, legiones rede." Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions. The Varus battle also had a strong symbolic meaning. It marked the end of the Roman Empire's urge to expand towards Germania. The Germans celebrated their victory as a triumph against the mighty Roman army and felt strengthened in their independence. The memory of the battle should motivate them to fight against the Romans and other conquerors for generations to come. The defeat of Varus also affected the Roman view and understanding of barbarians beyond the borders of the Roman Empire. He taught the Romans that the Germanic tribes, viewed as primitive, posed a real threat and that they should not be underestimated. The Varus battle and the consequent limitation of Roman expansion paved the way for increasing Germanization of the areas east of the Rhine. The Germans gained influence and mixed with the Romanized population in the border areas. The area west of the Rhine, on the other hand, remained firmly in Roman hands and retained its Romanized identity. The Varus battle also became a major subject in Roman literature and history. Historians such as Tacitus immortalized the events in their works, emphasizing the tragedy of the defeat and Arminius's deception of the Romans. The Varus battle served as a lesson for later generations of Romans, reminding them that the power of the Roman Empire was not invincible. In the Germanic tradition, the Varus battle also became an important legend. The Germans regarded Arminius as a national hero and hailed the victory over the Romans as proof of their valiant defense of their own culture and independence. Overall, the Varus battle was a significant event that had a lasting impact on the history of Rome and Germania. The defeat halted Roman expansion in Germania for good, bolstered Germanic self-confidence, and highlighted the challenges the Roman Empire faced in conquering and governing foreign territories. To this day, the Varus battle remains a fascinating chapter of antiquity and an example of the importance of terrain, logistics, communications, and leadership in military conflict. The Varus battle was a turning point in history, ending the expansion of the Roman Empire into Germania and reaffirming the Germanic people's independence. It was a combination of the difficult terrain of the Teutoburg Forest, supply problems, misjudgments by the Germanic tribes, communication problems and leadership errors, and Arminius's devastating surprise attack that led to the devastating defeat of the Roman army.